And this trust the science mantra is it kind of gets under my skin. I see all the yard signs, we believe in, and the science is dynamic and it's changing all the time. And if there's one thing we've learned over the last 18 months is that epidemiology probably is second in line behind economics and its ability to have any predictive power. And number two, we didn't know shit about how respiratory viruses are transmitted. The sad state of affairs is we had tens of thousands of people dying of flu every winter, and nobody really knew what the population dynamics of that transmission was, right? Which is kind of bizarre when you think about it. It's just like, whatever, 50,000 people die every year. It's like car accidents. It's just built into the thinking. So you don't really worry about it. So then this thing comes along, which is, admittedly way worse. And we're not really in a situation to deal with it. And I think the biggest fallout is going to be historically, the U.S. population had pretty good trust in entities like the FDA or the Centers for Disease Control. And, that served the country well when those organizations are behaving in a high functioning way. They completely abrogated their responsibility in any sort of visible way to the non-expert like me. Like I just read last night, newsflash, I get the New York Times news alert on my email. The FDA is going to accelerate the timeline for giving full approval to the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. It's going to be now Labor Day instead of later in the fall, and this is like an internally leaked thing. Pardon my French, I know that this is going to have an E next to it. Now, what the fuck are they waiting for? Something on the order of, if you assume about a third of the people vaccinated in the country got the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, that's more than 50 million people now have been vaccinated. What data set do they need that allows them to say it's no longer being used under an experimental use exemption? It just doesn't make any sense. And if that's, now it's like, oh, well, if we give it official approval, now everybody will want to take the vaccine. People had no idea what analysis goes into that decision. Even relatively well-educated people, I'll put myself in that population, unless you want to do a real deep dive, it's pretty hard to figure out what they're doing. And that goes back to the initial approval of those vaccines, right? The decision was taken. The non-decision was taken. They weren't going to do human challenge trials. There were people lining up that said, I'm willing to get infected with the virus so that from a small data set, you can figure out if this vaccine works. No, we can't ethically do that. God forbid if we infect a few hundred volunteers and one of them gets sick. That's horrible. Meanwhile, there's 3,000 people a day dying while they're sitting around twiddling their thumbs saying, for all these ethical reasons, we can't do a human challenge trial. So that kind of stuff just drives me nuts, because if you want to trust science, then do science.
Yeah, this is very interesting and a novel take. I was talking with somebody over the weekend, and they made a really interesting point to me, which was, you go to get the vaccine, you sign a whole bunch of things that say that the Merck and Johnson & Johnson and Pfizer, none of them are responsible for this. You are responsible for this. And yet, if you are sitting there saying, like, wait a second, if I can't go back, if something goes wrong on this and it's all on me, then I choose, no, I'm not going to do this. And yet then they're being told, like, you're a part of a death cult. You are. I heard Stephen Colbert last night comparing it to, I don't even remember but basically saying you're a part of a death cult and you are embracing death to die for your savior. And it's like, you can't have both of these things happening. You can't say the individual is 100% responsible for whatever happens here and simultaneously say you have no authority and autonomy or decision to make here, and if you make the one that's different than the one that we want, we're going to berate you. These two ends will never be squared, and it's only going to cause more conflict.
Yeah, I totally agreed. I'll bring it back around to organizational behavior. I think one of the things that we try to do at our company is to avoid setting up contradictory incentives. That's what happens so often, in the same, going back to the sort of corporate hell paradigm. we all want you to work. You work together as a team. You guys are a team. And then December 12th rolls around and it's performance review time. And the manager has to stack rank his team of 18 from highest to lowest. And the top 3 are going to get a 7% raise. And the bottom 3 are on a list that somebody puts in a file for the next time they restructure, and they're going to get fired. And it's just this, like, how can you say those two things with a straight face? So I think that you pointed out a really potent example of that, right? It's like, you must take this. It's your social responsibility. Sign here 20 pages later that if it's your social responsibility, it's your ass if anything bad happens to you. It's weird, right? And it's all about incentives. There've already been studies showing that people's resistance breaks down when they can just walk in the door to do it. Like, they literally get flagged down off the sidewalk.
Thanks for checking out this podcast short. If you'd like to listen to the rest of the interview, it's linked below. And if you like this kind of conversation, you may want to consider joining the Articulate Ventures Network. That's a place where people meet other podcast listeners, get to be a part of a digital neighborhood, and really get a chance to practice things like how they write, their speaking skills, and have a place where they can have an open dialogue with people that want to discuss ideas and leave all of the insults and the craziness of regular social media out of it. So if you're interested, go to network.articulate.ventures.